Does Gregg Berhalter stay, Heath? Given that Ernie Stewart's out and Brian McBride is out, it's okay, maybe this is circumstantial. Maybe Brian's decision was made prior to the World Cup, and Ernie just had a opportunity that he couldn't turn down, gets closer to family. PSV, obviously one of the bigger clubs, and Holland. What happens with Gregg now? Because when we talked to Brian, when he came on the show, his communication, what he had built up, what he helped Gregg build with the team, with the culture, to make sure everything was good, the relationships were good and strong with all the clubs that all the players play on. That now is going to change if Gregg stays, and his direct reports, and to what Charlie was saying before about being top down. Well, what if the new sporting director and technical don't like Gregg or want to change? Like, what? It gets really gray right now and a little sticky. So I think Gregg's gone anyway, but yeah, I think it helps here.
I think if both of them stayed, Gregg would still be gone just because of the circumstances that have surrounded U.S. soccer post World Cup. I think that's made it really hard for, even if he was a 49-51 or 51-49 after the World Cup, in terms of what I think was a successful rollout of a very young and experienced team moving forward. I think that second stint is always a very high risk one for the players, because you do demand a lot during that window to get the most out of them come World Cup. And then once all this happened, then I think it swings beyond the point of return. And there's just no way that, like you said, like we just talked about, well, okay, we're going to have a search up until summer and you're going to keep this interim coach on board. Well, you're obviously heading towards an open transfer window in terms of managers being out of contract and opportunities there to take them out of season or buy out their contracts or have them walk away. You're dealing with all kinds of things, right? But step one is figuring out all these other, like, you know, what is that technical role and how do you get that person in? And maybe that person turns around and says, I'm 100% backing Gregg Berhalter because he's the right guy in the circumstance that we have to move forward. And that's the case, but that's why you hire that role. Yes, there's a coaching search, and yes, it needs to be approved by the board budget-wise, and yes, JT's going to have a say, and Cindy's going to have a say, and everyone's going to have a say. But the technical director, usually when they come in, at least in the club scenario, need to have some autonomy to make some decisions to be accountable for what they want.
Can I ask you a question, both of you guys?
Yeah, shoot.
What type of candidate would you go after as
sporting director?
Sporting director. I think we know for a coach, because you know you to get the most out of this group, I think you got to go to someone who's had a lot of success in Europe, and I think that's why, or internationally, and I think that's why we said, you know, Jose Mourinho, that would be an awesome. Yugi Love, who's obviously had an incredible span with Germany. But as far as a sporting director, who would be kind of somebody that you would go after?
Yeah, in terms of names, I guess I'd have to sit by the fire and smoke my pipe and figure out what
I lean towards somebody that plays that. One, you have to have an experience of knowing the continental United States, right? The cultural side of the game here, because if you're implementing a style or a system of play, you need to understand that it's not as simple as turning it on. How kids grow up playing in border states or in
New Hampshire
communities and different from Charlie on ice in New Hampshire is going to be completely different, right? The seasons are different. The way you develop are different. Like understanding the nuance of the system of player development, because you're not just talking about, oh, I'm just trying to implement a style of the first team. You're trying to build an infrastructure for the future, right? Or build on the infrastructure that's already been built, which I hope is the case. So it makes it really hard to think about candidates, because when I think European, I'm like, okay, well then there's an educational phase and transitional phase. When I think about U.S. candidates, I'm like, who's the right candidate? And then how does that align to a head coach, right? So if you went and got a U.S. Sporting director, and then a European head coach, what's the combination of that, right?
Right.
Or
exactly.
or vice versa. It's a really complicated situation right now as to, chicken or the egg.
All I'll say is that this has to have hit pause on our coaching search. Like, you cannot hire a coach before you hire a sporting director, or even the technical director that Brian McBride, the general manager, whatever that he was in. You just can't. Those two roles have to have oversight and choice and their options in who that should be leading our national team moving forward. And
didn't you already get offered the role, Jimmy?
Well, So I can't confirm or deny any rumors at this time, Charlie. But I'm weighing my options, I think is the best way to say it. It's just like you. I mean, ultimately, I'm waiting to see if you're going to sign as sporting director first before.
I low-key think one of the three of us is applying.
I don't know if I want
think
Charlie as my boss.
one of the three of us is applying for one of those positions. I don't know who it is. It's a Survivor Island. No one's going to say anything, but I think one of us in here is going to do it. You know,
listen.
Throw a name in the hat.
Charlie's a passive aggressive boss. I think. You know, I've talked to some of the people that work at his houses that are doing that type of stuff, and he's super passive aggressive. No, not making eye contact. Like, hey man, you missed a spot dusting over there.
It's going to be tough because you got to get Charlie's boat all the way to Chicago. But at least there's a lake there.
Like, I saw a scratch on my boat. Can you buff that out?
But he will be able to keep the boat in Chicago, which is good for him. Summers will be nice. Yeah. By the way, when Charlie talked about Ernie picking him up from the airport, I was like, of course, because Charlie flew in on a private plane. Ernie pulls right up to the plane and helps him out. Like that's a fun pickup.
I don't know if they can afford Charlie, to be honest.
You come into LAX.
I don't know if they can afford Charlie.
Hey, you come into LAX and I got to keep doing loops to pick you up, Charlie. I'm gonna just tell you hop in an Uber, you know. But when you fly private like Charlie is, you pull right onto the tarmac and pick him up, which is that's an easy pickup.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Charlie's got a long list, I think, of demands if he was going to take this job. So
I mean,
vote him in.
Do you think though, if it is an American, that they would have had to have won an MLS Cup? Do you think that would be important to get this role, like, which would signify that they've had success? Because this is the direction.
Are you suggesting like a John Thornton or?
Yeah. I mean, whether it's
at LAFC.
I mean, if it's someone who put together a team and obviously they've won an MLS Cup, don't you think that is probably something that needs to happen?
I agree. I think some level of success, knowing how to put successful organizations together, I think would be super important. So that means Chris Klein is out. Shout out to Kleiner at the Galaxy, not doing well, my friend. Good luck next season. But I think that has to be some type of prerequisite. A level of success, demonstrating that you know how to make things work despite difficult circumstances, coping with adversity, balancing all these different personalities, getting everybody on the same page, and showing at the end of all that you have a trophy or something to signify, I know what the hell I'm doing. Yes, I think that's important. So Thornton would be an interesting hire. He's young, ambitious, smart, and I'm kind of curious. But like we talked about him before, I don't know if he'd leave the job at LAFC. It seems like he's bought himself a few years to chill out after winning MLS Cup last year, and I think he's got a great relationship.
Thornton chills. Have you seen his?
No, I know he doesn't. He doesn't chill, but I think he mentally, emotionally,
first workout, 2 p.m. second workout, everything in between. It's just like calls, screaming, fighting for your team to build it out. But again, they do have some technical aspects. You have your Tony Lepores at US Soccer. That there's going to be people that come in that are. Is that shout out New Hampshire, Charlie?
It is New Hampshire. Let's go. New England's all up in here.
But there is a technical aspect that they believe in already at US Soccer that wasn't just implemented by Gregg, right? Or wasn't just implemented by Ernie Stewart. There is a wider process of people that are in place to be able to help carry this thing forward. Therefore, the next candidate can't just come in and go, I got a whole bunch of ideas. I need to hire the coach. I also need to hire the GM. We're going to play a completely different style. Like there's going to be it's got to be a continuation in some ways. People can call Gregg a failure. They can call Ernie a failure on what he's done. People can have whatever opinions they want of that, but it has to be a continuation. It can't be a fresh start where we're going to rebuild US Soccer again for the umpteenth time.